Hello, and welcome to this FORTE Science Communications webinar. My name is Greg Adams, and I'm the managing editor of FORTE Science Communications. For over 30 years, FORTE has been supporting all aspects of science communications. This webinar focuses on tips for communicating effectively by email in English. I hope that the content of this webinar will help you if you are writing emails in English and will increase your confidence to write when it's required. This webinar will cover 4 topics. The first topic will be writing a clear subject line. Then we will look at how to address the recipient of your email, that is the person who will read the email. Then we will look at getting your point across or communicating your message. And finally, we will look at how to politely end your email. So before we begin, let us briefly look at the importance of email. As you may know, email is the most popular form of professional communication today. In fact, in 2019, almost 300 billion emails were sent daily. Although newer forms of communication have been developed, such as SMS, social media platforms, and chat, they haven't reduced the importance of email. So I'm confident that you will be required to write English emails at some point in your career. So this webinar should help you with that. So there are many different reasons to send an email. Let's look at some of the most common reasons. They include to ask a question, to share information, to confirm something, to follow up with someone, and even to thank someone. And I think that it is very important that you think about the purpose of your email before you start writing to help you decide appropriate phrasing to use. So knowing whether you are going to ask a question or thank someone will help you decide the terms and the types of sentences you use in your email. So now let's look at emails in detail. The first part of an email is going to be the subject line. Now, the subject line is what makes an email different from a letter. Now, it should be brief, but it must also be helpful. So I recommend that you use phrases related to an action. And if possible, you should make your subject line indicate the purpose of your email. So let's look at some real examples of subject lines. Each of these examples uses suitable action phrases. So example 1, questions about international shipping. Confirmation of order status. Following up on January 8th, 2020 sales meeting. Request for information on product size. An inquiry regarding laboratory protocols. And finally, thanks for the restaurant recommendation. So these are all good subject lines because in only a few words, they tell the recipient about the content of the email. And this will help the recipient to organize their inbox and decide which emails are higher priorities than others. Now let's talk about composing the body of an email. So there are 3 questions you need to ask. The first is, who is the recipient? Next, what is your message? And finally, how to end your email. So let's look at each of these individually. So who is the recipient? Emails are sent to a specific person, so they should name that person. For example, Dear Mrs. Turner. Dear Bradley. Hello, Catherine. Hi, Stephen. I'm sure each of you has seen these examples before. As you can guess, the first example, Dear Mrs. Turner, is the most formal. It uses dear, it gives the person's title, in this case, Mrs., and it includes the recipient's family name, Turner. As we go down this list, these obviously become more and more casual. While all of these are completely acceptable, I would always recommend to use the most formal when you are sending an email for the first time. If you find that the family name or the title of the person you are sending the email to is unclear, then I always recommend that you give the full name. So for example, Dear Carter Cameron. The name Carter Cameron is confusing because Carter and Cameron both could be first names or family names. So to avoid any confusion, I've used both. So now let's ask, what is the message for this email? Every email begins with an introductory statement that explains the reason it is being sent. For example, I visited your booth at the AMJ conference in Yokohama. Or, I received your email address from a colleague who told me your company may require custom 3D printing. Or, I am collecting pricing information on lab equipment in order to make a budget proposal. So once you have this introductory statement, then you can make your request using simple and direct language. Based on those previous examples, I would like to thank you for the detailed explanation of your research project that you gave me. I wanted to inform you that ABC Incorporated handles custom 3D printing projects, and we may be able to assist you. Or, does your company provide discount rates from the listed catalog price for large volume orders? So each of these underlined phrases, again, uses very simple and direct language. The key here is to communicate clearly. If your email is going to include an attachment, I recommend that you specifically mention it so that it won't be overlooked by the recipient. So for example, I've attached a PDF copy of my most recent publication on nanoparticles. Or please find attached our brochure that explains our manufacturing capabilities. Or I'm attaching an Excel file containing a list of equipment we are considering purchasing. Each of these examples describes the attachment in detail. So not just PDF or Excel file, it explains what is inside the file. And this will help the recipient to know before they open the file what information it will contain. So the final question we need to ask is how to end your email. And once again, your closing should relate to the purpose of your email. For example, I look forward to discussing with you at next year's conference. Or, if ABC Incorporated can be of any assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me. Or, thank you in advance for any information you can provide. So once again, these tie nicely to the subject and the opening statement, and they tie together the purpose of the email very nicely. The final step is the sign-off. And I recommend a simple sign-off is best. And this can be done with simply one word, such as sincerely, regards, or thanks. But don't forget to include your name and any other relevant information. So for example, sincerely, David Goss, ABC Incorporated. In this case, the sender is including his company name to emphasize the connection to the company. If you have received an email, it is necessary for you to obviously write a response. So how can we respond to an email? Well, the first step is that there is no need to write a subject line. Obviously, it is already included in the email. However, we still must consider the purpose of the email. And our response must match the request of the sender. So these are important points to keep in mind. So addressing the reply to the name of the sender is as easy as we understand from the previous examples. We have sincerely David Goss of ABC Incorporated. If I wish to reply, I might write, Dear Mr. Goss. It's clear to me that Goss is the family name, so I will write Mr. Goss. But as I mentioned before, if it is not clear, I can write Dear David Goss. And it is important to remember to match the formality of the sender. For example, if the sender uses hello, you may also use hello in your reply. If the sender uses dear, then you should probably use dear as well for consistency. In your response email, you should include a statement that acknowledges the sender's request. For example, thank you for your inquiry regarding our pricing. Or thank you for contacting me about the services your company provides. Or thank you for the invitation to the upcoming meeting. To avoid any confusion, I recommend using the specific terms the sender uses. If they ask about pricing, you should use the word pricing. If they ask about a brochure, use the word brochure. And this will ensure that there is no miscommunication. And you must finally provide a response to the sender's request. For example, as requested, I am sending you a detailed breakdown of our pricing and volume discount program. Or, I will carefully review the brochure you sent and will contact you if I require additional information. Or, I will be able to attend the meeting and I look forward to seeing you there. If you are too busy, maybe you will reply, unfortunately, I am unable to attend the meeting. Could I receive a written summary later? So let's take a final look at a typical email. This should be a very familiar sight to all of you. But from today's webinar, we can recognize the key points. Number one, we have a clear subject line. Number two, we've addressed the email to the recipient using very polite phrasing of dear and Mr. Here we've given a very detailed message. And finally, we've closed the email in a very polite way. We've said thank you in advance for your response and sincerely. This is a very polite and natural closing. So if you keep these points in mind, next time you are writing an English email, you should feel more confident in communicating clearly. And it should also make it easier for you to write. So thank you very much for viewing this webinar. I hope that the content will be helpful for you, and I wish you the best of luck with your science communication.